And we are so lucky today to have the one and the only Oksana Esberard. Welcome to the show, Oksana.
Thank you so much. Fantastic to be on it.
I'm so excited to have you here. I want to give a little bit of background on you to the audience, and then we'll get going. So first of all, guys, this is a live stream. Let me get my notes up here. This is a live stream. So what does that mean? That means we're live, okay? So start a watch party, ask us questions. If you like our comments, and like I always say, there's lots of stuff to like here. We have teams, my team is on standby. So they'll be sending instant messages or questions over to us for me to answer and for Oksana to answer, and for any of your little burning heart's desires. So again, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome, Oksana. I'm so excited to have you. Let's give a little bit of an intro for Oksana. Oksana and I met almost, I think it was 2 years ago. Is that right? Was it a year ago?
Yeah.
So we met at this amazing program that I have the pleasure and gratefulness to be a part of, called Gathering of Titans at MIT. And Oksana was one of the speakers, and she was a participant in the program. I believe it was not this previous, but past April. And she was with us for the whole 5 days and just teaching us some amazing stuff. So really, let's give the credit where credit's due. Oksana is a certified business mindfulness and meditation expert. She's an international speaker, best-selling author of the best-selling book, Next Level You. She leads corporate mindfulness programs, private coaching, and retreats for entrepreneurs, small businesses, and Inc. 500 companies around the world. She was born and raised in the far east of Russia, and Oksana became a citizen of the world at the age of 16. She's traveled to 55 countries, leading executive events and workshops in India, North America, and Russia. Holy smokes, that is so cool. Welcome to the show, Oksana. So, listen, I started doing this thing about 2 shows ago, and I want to see if you would be game for this. Would you be game to do a yoga laugh or 2 with me to start the show? Have you done a yoga laugh before?
Yeah. I mean, I would want to see your version of the yoga laugh, but I did like classes of yoga laugh.
Okay, I'm going to do mine. Mine is, I was taught a yoga laugh is a forced laugh. You laugh as hard as you can. So I'm going to give you, this is me showing you my version, and then you could say, no, I'm not going to do it, or yeah, I'm down. Okay, you ready? All right, I'm going to go. 1, 2, 3. How was that? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate my yoga laugh?
It's the ripple impact. So I usually cannot do forced laugh. It's always bubbles up as natural. So I'll just laugh all the time. Okay. This is me laugh. There's no yoga in it.
Oh, I love it. All right. So you want to do one together, and then we'll get the show started? Okay. All right. I can't make a joke, but I can just do a laugh and you laugh with me. Ready, set, go. Oh, you know what I like about yoga laughs the best is, like, I actually feel a little bit high right afterwards. Like I feel like a buzz, and I'm like, oh, the body is so amazing. And that's why I really wanted you to be on the show, because I think when we first met, it was about a month or 2 after I had discovered my ability to meditate. And it actually was the end of March. It was a couple weeks before, actually. So it was March of 2019. And then a couple weeks later, I met you, and I was like, I was telling you at lunch, I'm like, yeah, I just started meditating. And so it was so cool to actually meet someone that does it for a living and promotes it to businesses and people. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you do? And then I really want to go back and just tell our audience how you got there.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing me on the show. And there has been a lot of updates, and we didn't catch up that much, but since we've met and the COVID situation and everything that happened, the direction that we took with the purpose of mindfulness and meditation is actually gearing towards the mental health. It's literally helping people feel better despite what's going on in the world. And the tools that I have been learning for my personal purposes. I've struggled with anxiety, depression. My Soviet Union upbringing gave me a lot of strength and preparation for life. But on the flip side, it gave a lot of anxieties and fear mentality and survival mode. And so naturally leaning towards the happiness and having the ability to laugh out loud, I was really under the weather most of my time and most of my life. And it was depressing for me. I was questioning, why am I like that? And so these tools of awareness, meditativeness, and most importantly, later is working with the feelings and being able to switch your emotions and how you feel and how you perceive everything around you, because you know it better than anyone. You can look at the same thing and two people, one person is super happy about it, another person is pissed. And what determines that, right? It's the person, it's not the thing itself, it's not the external event. And in situations like we are right now in this pandemic, in times of uncertainty and riots, is there room still to be well, to feel alive, to feel happy even? And this was the kind of the obsession of my personal life, and I've made leaps and bounds and progress to the degree that I never thought was possible. And then naturally, when something like this happens to you, and you can attest to that, you want to share it. You want to say, hey, like, whoever is depressed, whoever is anxious, whoever is worried, whoever is fearful, whoever is just afraid of stepping out and be fully alive, there is hope for you. There are tools that you can do and use that can change your chemistry inside out. And therefore, you don't need to work so hard on changing the external environment. I moved across the countries because I was changing my external environments all the time. But now it's all internal and changing that. And then surprisingly, external environment just starts to fall into place. And there are lots of synchronicities and people like you show up in your life. And it's just joy. It's just joyful to be here and do what you do best. So that's kind of my backbone of it.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I remember like when we first met you, I don't know if you'll remember this conversation we had, but we were sitting at lunch and I was saying something about to the effect of, I feel like something's missing in my life. And you kind of brought it to me and you had said something to the extent of, well, you know, maybe you need to quit looking externally and look internally. And I don't know if you remember that it was during one of our group lunches. And it really stuck with me because I knew, like intuitively, I knew that was what was going on, but it was, you know, it's a pretty complicated thing to deal with, you know, and I think to your point, you know, we have no control over the external environment. Like, and when you look at like Viktor Frankl and his work, and, you know, this is a guy that was in the concentration camps and found a way to like survive and thrive despite, you know, being in probably the worst situation you could possibly be in. And I think that's where I've kind of gotten to, and this is where I'm so excited about the work you're doing, is that we only can control our minds, you know, and that's what we own. We own the way that our minds feel. And so that's so cool that you're taking your gift and your interest in, you know, this awareness and mindfulness and meditative work and applying it, you know, from the standpoint of mental health, because I think that mental health is probably the most misunderstood healthcare epidemic we have in the world right now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like what your thoughts are on that?
So we've met when I was all full on about mindfulness and meditation. And as much as people like you resonated with it, there was a huge group of people that just wouldn't connect with it. And they were like, I don't really see what is it in there for me. I can't meditate. I'm too active. I'm achiever, especially among entrepreneurial circles. And, you know, if you're C-level, you're always on the go. So will it slow me down? And there was always these concerns. And so with the sprout of coronavirus, I started to understand that, well, where we're in right now, this is actually, think about it as a battlefield. We're in a war right now. But statistics shows that the most amount of suicides and when people mental health really declines is after the time of struggle. It's after the time of the war zones, winter. It's actually in spring when we have the most amount of suicides. So when I started to look at the statistic paired with the statistic that mental health has been the biggest public issue, it was first kind of private sector medical issue. Now it's the biggest public issue that we are facing as a society all across the globe, especially in the United States. 1 in 5 people have mental health issues, and it doesn't have to be a diagnosed kind of disease of any sort. It's just people are not feeling well, and as a result, we're drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, we're numbing ourselves with social media, technology, internet, news, sleeping pills, digestive pills. And so this whole culture of numbing ourselves from life, it's a pandemic. It's another pandemic that nobody speaks about. And
Right.
therefore, once I understood, and I having issues with anxiety and depression, I didn't want to go to therapy. I didn't want to be labeled as mental health. I probably had ADD, ADHD, OCD, whatever you want to call it, like a bouquet of labels. But I was so ashamed and afraid of those labels that I never went and got diagnosed. I never
Yeah.
took any prescription medication because I was like, no, I don't want it. And so I can only imagine how many people, I mean, I don't even need to imagine. There are statistics that there are millions and millions of people that are struggling with these issues, but because of the shame and the guilt and the stigma around these issues, they're struggling and they're not saying it out loud. It's like having this war and the storm inside you, and on the outside, you're laughing and you're all
Right.
joyful. That's what I did for the majority of my life. It was just shit show, sorry for my French, inside, but outside, I was amazing. Everybody who would ask me, how are you? I'm like, I'm amazing. I'm great. Right.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. So my goal and I guess purpose in life for now, for the way I approach mental health is actually matching our external and internal world. Is that if we have some storms inside, we have the capacity and vulnerability to express it so we can get help from others,
Yeah.
and also manage ourselves internally, have the capacity to change what's going on inside. So outside is just beautiful naturally, no matter what's happening. And that's how I
Yeah.
believe, Viktor Frankl and Nelson Mandela and other great leaders who faced huge adversities in their lifetimes,
Right.
they were able to stay sane, leader like, in many cases, even find joy. So that's kind of where mental health come into picture, is to rebrand it. It's not
Yeah.
something we need to shy away from.
There's so much there. There's so much there. Just if you're joining us, please like start a watch party. Like you guys have an amazing expert here on so many things around mindfulness, and I mean, this is the moment. So please ask questions. We have people on standby ready to answer. My team's on standby ready to pass the messages over. So it's a great opportunity to get some one-on-one time and one-on-one questions with Oksana. Yeah, you just nailed like a couple things that I've realized. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm the on the go on the go on the go. And I said this a couple episodes ago, but like my joke used to be, there's two things I hate in life: hiking and meditation, and I hated them equally. And I still hate hiking, and I'll say I'll always say that. I'm like, I don't get it. Well, who wants to just stare at rocks and leaves? But I know. Everyone I ask this question to, they're like, me, I do. But on the meditation side, what I realized was the achiever, and I think many people don't have the patience for it because they think they need to have patience for it. And I don't. I think that's actually not untrue. What happened for me was I figured out, at least this is where it clicked, that the inside and the outside were not necessarily aligned, as you're saying. And one of the things I learned was that how we meditate is how we are in the world. And so, how when we take that moment to center ourselves, and when we're not able to, it's because that's how we're going through our day. Those are the things we're thinking about. And so it was like an awakening for me. I mean, like it was a massive awakening. I went from someone who literally hated meditation. I'm telling you, I hate meditation. I hate hiking, to it's the number one thing I do every day. It's the first thing I do after I wake up in the morning. And I relish the moment to do it because I get to see where I'm at. And it's not about being good at it. I don't even think there's such a thing as being good at it. But the other thing that I think you touch on, and I'm a unique person. You didn't know this about me, but I grew up in a family where my mother had a master's in social work. So she was a licensed clinical social worker, and she worked specifically with people who had mental illness. And she was like, my mom, like I grew up with like someone sitting there like telling me how, like what was going on with me from an emotional standpoint all the time. But despite that, I'm the same as like what you're saying. Some of the things you're saying I can relate to. Like I've suffered tons of anxiety. I always said, oh, I was a worried kid. I just like thought that was just the way I was. My grandmother was my grandmother was from the Depression era, and my grandfather as well. And so I always like thought, oh, we're just worried people. Like I literally, I'm kidding you not, when I was 10, I thought that was like a thing. Like you just are that, because I was always worried about stuff. And it carried into my adult life until like, even, I still like struggle with it. But one of the things I started doing was I started doing somatic experience work. I don't know how much you know about that, but my somatic experience therapist, one of the things he said to me that was like amazing, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is he said, Darius, the body never forgets. He said the body never forgets. And so when he said that to me, it was interesting, because I think a lot of people want to be logical about why they feel a certain way. And the more I dug into it, I found that a lot of people suffer from digestive issues, sleep issues, these things that you would not necessarily assume are completely related to these mental health issues, but they're inextricably tied to one another, that people suffer from insomnia, for instance, because of potentially childhood trauma that happened to them, or some later life trauma. Because as Stephen Terrell says, this is my mentor in this, and he says it he has a great voice. He goes, Darius, the body never forgets. And so what are your thoughts about that?
I completely agree. And this was my belief and personal discovery. In general, the way I approach life, especially after going through many yoga trainings, and I trained in India and Himalayas, and I go back to India quite often, is about getting the whole system as an integral system. When we go to the logic approach, when we go to the intellectual and analytical approach, intellect is there to dissect. The science is there to dissect. The medical science is there to dissect. We are looking at, how the kidney operates, how the heart operates, how the brain operates. But there are very few sciences in the Western world that look at everything as a human being, as this whole system, as an integral system. And when it comes to the body, in my personal experience, I struggled with digestive issues, and I would go to the doctors. I went to the doctors about my gastritis since I was first time in the United States and ate my first hamburger. I got a lot of digestive issues. I went to the doctors in Russia, United States, and Asia, in Hong Kong. And everybody was giving me a bunch of pills. And then I was like, well, I was looking at myself. I'm like in my 20s. I'm having this cup full of pills in my hand. And I'm like, this is wrong. Like, this is not supposed to be. And so I started to ask them questions. Maybe I'm eating something wrong. Maybe I am doing something, like, could you tell me more? And there was one aha moment when this doctor for the stomach said, how do I know what you're supposed to eat? Go to nutritionist. And I was just like, what? Like, you don't even know like that what you put into your stomach impacts your stomach? Like, how is that even possible? And so the whole system of mindfulness and meditation in general is, first of all, is paying attention to your body. You anchor your awareness in your body. And then once that body is healthy and well, then you can go to those perceptions and dimensions and expand your point of view from multiple points. But number one, this whole body system is so neglected by the society. We worship it as almost like a jewelry, like a diamond, but we don't do the basics and necessities of what this body is the most intelligent thing that's been created on this earth, at least in this universe. This is the most sophisticated, intelligent machine. And yet we treat it like it's a rock, like, just mechanical thing. It knows how to breathe, it knows how to beat the heart, and then of course it remembers. If you abuse an animal and you go back to that animal 10 years later, the animal remembers, and it doesn't have the brain that we have, it doesn't have the capacities that we have. So do we really think that this body does not remember everything that you said, whoever touched you, whoever you came across, how you talking to it every day? It's silly to think that. It's ignorant. It's ignorant to think that.
Yeah. So like you're going into like two really big things And number one, thank you for that insight. And listen, if you're listening, this is some awesome stuff. We got a question that just came across, but anyone else, please send your questions in, and start watch parties. We're going to be going here for a little longer. We're lucky enough to have Oksana's time today. And like I said, you got an expert here on some really amazing work. So the question is, that came across is what was the hardest step for you in starting a meditation practice?
So this is an amazing question, and I will say, I'll kind of backstep a little bit. The hardest step for me to even realize the need of a meditation practice, because similar to you, Darius, if somebody would tell me even 10 years ago that I would be teaching meditation professionally or doing mindfulness or even doing it myself, I'll be like, ha, good joke. And I'll give them a good yoga laugh. And I'll be like, yeah, not me. I was a party animal. I mean, all the clubs of Moscow, Hong Kong, Miami, anywhere in the world, the place where I would check out as like, I must go is nightlife. So getting up at 5:30 in the morning, like I would come to home at 5:30 in the morning. Like I was meeting sunrise from the opposite end. So first was this realization that there's something is not okay inherently. And that was really hard because who wants to admit that there is something wrong with you?
Right.
If
Totally.
somebody tells you that there's something wrong with you, what are you gonna say? Thank you? You're gonna say like, I don't like you. There's something wrong with you,
Right.
right? Imagine doing it to yourself and really actually recognizing that there are things that are not matching from what you want from life and what you experiencing as life. So we all have this idea of how we want to live. I think there's not a single person that you would ask, how do you want your life? That they wouldn't say, I want to be happy, healthy. I want to feel love. I want to be around people that I love, right? I think these
Right.
are universal. These are human conditions. How many people actually live happy, healthy, loving relationship that they really adore people that are with? How
Right.
many of us wake up and just like, oh, another day, where's my cup of coffee? And then I was like, oh, my kids just shut up before my coffee. Oh, my colleagues, they're doing this and this and that,
Yeah.
right? But there's a disconnect. There's this huge disconnect. So how do you meet that gap? Well, first of all, you need to recognize that disconnect. And it is hard. It takes courage. It takes a very hard look on yourself.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur and gathering of titans, that group of people are really good at having hard look at themselves and looking at their shortcomings. So meditation, if you look for a magic bullet that, well, meditation is going to solve something, meditation creates awareness. And first of all, in meditation, there are two things that I believe that you need to do. There should be an understanding of why you're doing it. Just like anything in life, don't start meditation because I tell you or because Dario's now hated it and now loving it. Uh, there should be a reason of what change you want to make, and is meditation is the right tool. Meditation is the tool, number one, of awareness. Like you said, you sit down and you see and pay attention to everything that is happening inside you.
Yeah.
And the first meditation experiences, and you might attest to it, if you are someone who likes to worry or who got used to worry, you see that worry magnified 10 times fold.
Yeah.
If you
Totally.
think about, do you know those magnified glasses? Women will relate to me with those magnified glasses. When you look at yourself, you see every single cell magnified, and you look at your face and you're like, that's kind of how meditation feels in the beginning. It's just this huge magnified glass, and you
Right.
see all your imperfections. And therefore, it takes tremendous amount of courage, and then it takes tremendous
Yeah.
amount of awareness and self-love, and generally guidance of a teacher to push you through, to pull you out of that mud, to pull you out of that garbage that you've been collecting for so long.
Yeah.
And for that, you kind of need the discipline. You need the ability to say, I am up for it. I am going to do the spring cleaning. And no matter how long it lasts, I'm going to commit to it. And so it takes discipline, but you need to know why. You need to have a teacher, because chances are you're not going to be able to pull through that garbage yourself, or you
Yeah.
need some kind of external force. And then you need a technique. A lot of people nowadays, we have apps, and it's Headspace, and it's different app, a different thing every day. Well, you're not training yourself to anything. You're entertaining yourself in a meditative way. So there are many things that need to be addressed before it will stick as a practice, and before you feel that, okay, it's making changes on my life.
Well, so yeah, let's touch on that. So people that like I'm a person, I use I do, gosh, oh my God, Waking Up app, right? I really like, I love that app actually, but I like his style. But I want to dig a little deeper. If people, and for me, that seemed to be Sam Harris. I like his teachings. I didn't like the other ones, kind of for the reason you're saying. His seemed a little bit more of like I can see him pulling back the layers through the practice, and I could see him. He's not explicitly. He does have lessons too, actually, but I just do the practices. So, what do you think if people want to learn? And in your opinion, obviously, not everyone's going to be able to go maybe hire a private teacher to teach them this. What would you give? What advice would you give to people? And that also, I think that's a big commitment for some people. What would you, let's say a teenager wants to do it. What would be your advice for someone like that?
I would share what happened and helped me. And first of all is our ability to sit still. So my first, what's it called, mindfulness practice, which I didn't know it was a thing at that time, when I was in Asia and I was completely derailed, and I write about it in my book. My first practice was sit still for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't do anything. Don't look at your phone. Don't distract yourself. You sit still for 2 minutes. You can stare outside of the window, but you don't get up, and you just there. You are becoming present. You're becoming aware. We lack the ability of stillness, and people, I would say nowadays, jump to meditation a little too soon, because if you don't have their ability to concentrate, if you don't have their ability to sit still, this itches, that itches, I need a glass of water, I need to get up, all of this stuff, you're just sitting there and you are using your willpower not to get up. But meditation is way deeper than that. Meditation is exploring the layers. But if your leg is itches and something else is ringing, you need to get up, you're worried about your schedule, you're not able to observe yourself fully. If I would ask you to sit down, and you sit down and you try to observe yourself, and someone sits next to you and pokes you all the time in different points, would you be able to observe yourself well?
Of course not. No.
That's what's happened. Our bodies are so untrained to sit still and to be present. Just being present. Forget about closing your eyes yet. Just be present. Look at the grass. I laughed when I heard the saying first, I'd rather watch the grass grow. And I was like, what an idiotic saying. Like, this is so stupid. And now I'm like, I get it. I'm like, I actually would rather sit and watch the grass grow, because it's just such a profound stillness, and you can see the patterns, and it's just magic. And I'm like, right. Oh my God, I became that weird person. So for teenagers, so for anybody who is in the beginning, one, work with your nervous system. The best times to actually sit down and meditate is when you're exhausted. So if you're doing any workouts, hiking, if you're doing any hikings, once you reach the peak, once you are exhausted physically and mentally, you kind of ready to give up, like, oh, I don't want to think anymore. That's the best times to sit down still and be and observe. And you would be able to sense that magic and movement that literally happens in the air, inside you, outside you, that consciousness that Sam Harris is talking about, and he really unpacks it in different. I'm not following Wake Up app, so I've never tried it, but I know who Sam Harris is, and I know his work on using hallucinogenous drugs to unpack those dimensions, and then he pretty much uses his work to try to communicate it to people that don't want to use drugs for that awareness. So I get it, and I know which dimensions he's working with. So yeah, sit still, learn to sit still, learn to manage the body first. That's the basics of meditation. That's why yoga, for example, hatha yoga is actually, it didn't mean to be an exercise. It meant to prepare your body for the long hours of meditation. And then, of course, once it came to the West, it became its separate thing of whatever it is now. So sit still would be the number one. Learn how to sit still and be okay with it, not wanting to get up. And then closing your eyes would be the second. And then selecting one technique and sticking to it.
Yeah. That's such good advice. And so it's funny, like I'm teaching my children about mindfulness. And I brought this up a couple of shows ago. I said, I can't believe they don't teach it to children. It's like, I mean, it's amazing. Because I think it's the most powerful tool we have is the awareness and mindfulness. I have a mentor. I know, did you meet Rand Stagen when he was one of the speakers at GOT? So he's one of my mentors. And he says, a saying he says is, with awareness comes choice.
Right.
And I love that. Like, with awareness comes choice. So with my kids, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. We a couple times a week, it's a 1 minute, mindfulness exercise where we sit down and I let them lead it too, where they'll say, take a deep breath in, Dad, deep breath out, but I'm just trying to teach them the language around awareness. And I took a note here. You said something that, and I Dr. or David Zellman as well. I'm
actually not familiar with him.
He's a GOT member, and David Zellman does the transitions. He does a program called Transitions, and he basically what he does in Transitions is this whole thought process around what conversations are we having with ourselves and how those actually result in our results. So I want to plug my book, and I want you to plug your book. But this is a galley copy of my book. I want to send you a copy of this because get your thoughts on it. But the name of the book is The Core Value Equation, and it's based off that. It's based off the conversations we have equal our results. And what I made a connection when I was writing the book around the conversations we have with ourselves, I believe, are based off of the values that we believe in. And that when we get really attuned with our values, they have a direct correlation to the internal conversations we start to have. And then those lead to a lot of the results that we start to see around us. I think there's more dimensions to it than that, but I do want to touch on that because, like, I think you're making such a great statements around this awareness of being and centering and just having an awareness of not numbing ourselves. And you're talking about, being a party animal, and I can relate. Like, I love it. I love to go out and have a wild night. And the awareness I had was that as a child, I was not allowed to be spontaneous, and that I found spontaneity through partying. That was the one time I could, like, get out of my head and do whatever I want to do. And this is something I recently figured this out. And it wasn't necessarily from a healthy perspective, but that I think that people want, they're trying to escape this life, right? And to your point, by us having to sit still, we are having to look in that up close, look in our pores to see, what we really are. And so I think that there's a correlation that I'm putting together between having that up close look at our awareness, our mind, as well as our values. What is it that we value, and how is that coming to life in the world? Because I think that where we're seeing these, like Anthony Bourdain, for Christ's sake, killed himself, right? And Dave Chappelle does a whole like a joke about it. It's a kind of a joke, but kind of not. He said, let us not forget Anthony Bourdain killed himself, right? And you're like, this is a guy that traveled all over the world, meeting amazing people, eating the best food. I mean, like, literally, if you could write down what an amazing life looks like, that's what, like, I think you would be hard pressed to find any people to say that doesn't sound like an amazing life. And yet this guy wanted to end it, and probably for a lot of reasons, right? And so when we start to look at things like that, and that we have this mental health epidemic, which I agree with you, because I think mental health issues beget more mental health issues for our families. It becomes generational, and it's a virus, right? It's viral in that sense. So my question to you is, when you look at your life and when you look at this practice and these teachings you give, which of your values do you think come front and center that allow you to really embrace this part of yourself?
Well, I love the direction of values that you have taken. And I have to confess right now that in the past old party animal me thought all this conversation about values is garbage. I'm like, values? And frankly, I think the huge organizations and companies that kind of spoil the whole image of values, because they would write it on the walls. And when I was employed, I would come to organization and they're like, our values is this and this and this and this, and we are so pretty and we're so determined and we are impact and da 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 da. And then when you actually work inside, there's no one follows it. Everybody's backstabbing. People are confused. They're not taking care of their customers the way they're writing on the walls they will. And so you have this kind of like values. Yeah, right. Then another stigma is about morale, right? When I started to travel around the world, I realized that what's moral in Russia is considered insane in another places, and what's moral in another place, it's considered immoral. And so then all these different perspectives of cultures that we bring as values are also not it. So what it took me really working in entrepreneurial communities and digging deep, like it took me almost more than a year to just understand even what value is for me and how do I want to work with that. And so what I realized and how I abide of values, and what we also practice it inside the organization, is actually what do you practice on consistent basis that makes your life better, that makes your life directional, that makes your life congruent with what you feel internally and what you want to project externally. Yeah. And typically there are actually not that many things. I mean, if you can get like 5-6 of those values out and clear, that's like it. It's going to describe your whole life. There's not, whenever people say like, oh, I have so many values, and they list like 100 of characteristics. Well, the question is, the test is, are you practicing them at least weekly, each and every one of them? Chances are you don't. So when I started to dissect it in this way, and I went through different exercises from different directions, I constantly kept coming back to the same 5 things. For me, one is energize, is leaving the people and the places better than you found it. And you barely will see me, even if I'm sick as a dog, you would barely, and I need to present myself publicly, you will never see me like, like, no, it's against my value. I might feel like I'm not even on this planet Earth, but I will give you my best, my energy, my enthusiasm. And so you will leave. Maybe you would not agree with me, but at least you will say, well, she was fun, right? The second one is keep it simple. I've noticed that when we complicate things so much in our relationships, in our interactions, in our way we think inside, my brain is the most complex, complex thing that constantly makes things sound worse than they are or bigger than they are. And so I realized that I need to constantly, when I keep it simple, when I break it down, it actually helps. And I heard it from someone, I don't remember who, it says, say it so a 6-year-old can understand it and a 60-year-old can use it. And that's kind of my benchmark on how to keep it simple. What do you do? The third one is be present, because we're constantly distracted. We want the next shiny thing. We want the next goal, or this is so painful. Like, this experience is so painful that I don't want to be here. But pain is the most fertile growth ground for us. So if you can have the capacity of be present from pain, there are lessons, there are wisdom, there's opportunity to erase the old memory, that story, the pain in the body that you were mentioning. I ignored my back pain I didn't actually ignore it. I went to doctors and I'm like, there's back pain. And we would measure, we would do x-rays, we'll do all these things. Nobody could tell me anything. Now I know it was emotional. Now I know it was stress. But it wasn't until I got herniated disc that somebody was like, oh, now you have herniated disc. I was like, well, thank you. I had pain in my back for 8 years. So being present with your pain, why is it there? If I would question myself more in those years when it was just on the level of the pain, I wouldn't get the physical aspect of it right now. The other one is choose forward. I happen to be driven. This is me personally, not so many people motivated by that. In fact, science shows there's like 3% that aren't actually motivated. I don't have to experience pain to want to evolve. Like
Right.
I actually can sit and everything is amazing and fantastic and you don't want to change a thing. And I would be like, ooh, I wonder how we can impact and grow and contribute and make it better. Like, this is amazing. I'm like, how to make it better. So choosing forward is one of my principles. And then the last one is collaborate. And this is a very surprising one for me because I was always a lone player. There's no team. Like, there's always survival. You know, I was skilled more than the majority of my peers. So I'm like, I'd rather do it myself. You know, why delegate and things like that. And so now I'm in the point where I realize that the ant colony or the bees colonies are so grand and so majestic. It's not because there's one bee that is so cool that is like, you know, everybody rotates around it. No, it's because they're working together as a team. They're adding their own values, contribution. They're all so different. They go to different places. They do different skills. And together they make this amazing thing. And so I look at planet Earth is this big beehive that if we only realize that we're all of the same kind, it doesn't matter, brown bees, black bees, white bees, we're all in this huge beehive that we can make amazing and we can all contribute our own stuff, then like that's the essence of collaboration. I can do everything that you do. So why compete? Why segregate? Just let's join together. So collaborate became one of the strongest principles that was very unusual and the opposite of where I was trained myself to be.
Man, you're just giving me chills right now. I swear, like, this is such a cool conversation, and I'm so bummed that we're running out of time. I want to keep going with you. So look, we are running out of time here. What I would love for you to do is, tell the audience where they can find you, and then we'll get things wrapped up here. But yeah, where can we find you? Because I know you got a book, you got a website, you got a business. Like, tell the audience where they can find you because you're doing so much good in the world, and people, you need to be like at the White House fixing problems right now. I mean, I'm serious. Like, where can we find you?
I appreciate the kind words. I don't think I have the capacity for the White House yet. I need to work on my patience a little bit more for that one, but maybe soon. So the best to start is actually reading a book. It's my story of life, and what the feedback from the book is that when you read somebody else's stories and how they overcame and what was going on, you actually have the parallels. Is the best way to learn is through somebody's stories. And I also sprinkle it with a lot of science, and there are techniques in there. So techniques like we discussed, sitting still, and I say how it happened to me and what happened to others. And so it's a great resource. The website sattva.me, sattva.me. That is an amazing resource for CEOs, HR professionals who actually want to bring the tools of well-being, mental health awareness, and start to solve this pandemic. And these are the tools for people who care about their people. So there are some packages and tools that we can incorporate within the organizations or within any team dynamic and environment. And then personally, I'm on all social media. I mean, the grown-up social media, I figured that there's some new TikToks and other stuff that I don't do, but Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. So I obviously will post this talk on YouTube as well. So there are many ways to connect, and feel free to email me. It's sana@sattva.me. So sana@sattva.me. I'll be happy to answer any questions or see how we can direct you in the direction that you want to go.
Wow. Like, my heart is full. This is so cool. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much. And you guys, check out Oksana. Her book, one more time, what's the name of your book? It is Next Level You. Yeah, Next Level You. You can find it on Amazon. And we'll be posting in the comments all this stuff so you guys can go check her out. And yeah, like, this has been a killer 45 minutes. Like I said, my heart is full. Thank you, Oksana. You are such a rock star, and we're so grateful to have you on the show. And I can't wait to have you on again. This has been great. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Darius, and thank you for making our world greater through your podcast and bringing us all together and collaborating and putting this work forward. Appreciate you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is my pleasure, man. This is more fun than I can tell you. So guys, we'll be going on later on today live with Daniel Marcus talking about the Growth Institute.